Hi, everyone. This is Amy Cooper with Rise, and I'm here today with Craig Kliethermes with RLI Insurance Group. He is the President and Chief Operating Officer. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you, Amy. Glad to be here today.
Yeah, we are very excited to have you here and want to learn a little bit more about you and kind of pick your brain on some career advice. So if you could just start off by telling us, how did you get into insurance?
So I grew up in Southwest Missouri and was actually interested in math. And my dad happened to work at an insurance company. He was in the HR department, ran the HR department. And he told me once, he says, both my mother and my sister are school teachers, and that's the only thing I know you can do with math. He goes, but there's this new profession called actuarial science. I don't know anything about it. We don't have any actuaries, but I think it uses applied mathematics, and you should look into that because they make more money. So I actually looked into that. I was back in like 1983, 85, and went to work at this insurance company. Actually, they started me mowing the lawn.
At the insurance company?
At the insurance company, because they had a whole, like a corporate center. Well, they owned it, so they had me mow the lawn. So I always say that I worked my way from the grounds up, the insurance industry. But then about 1985, they let me come in instead of that summer, the second summer, like my sophomore year in college, or actually, I think it was my junior year in high school. They let me come in and they said, look, they had this IBM PC, dual floppy drive in a box still in the middle of the actual department. And they said, look, we do all this stuff manually. We don't have any idea what to do with this personal computer. We need you to figure out how to open it up, get it started, and we're going to have you automate a lot of the stuff we do. So I basically spent the summer learning what they did and then trying to figure out if I could replicate it in like Lotus 123, which probably doesn't, I don't think it even exists anymore. But that was the original kind of spreadsheet thing. And so I started there, and it was a personal lines company. I worked there for a while. Even after I graduated, I worked there for several years. Then I worked for the Missouri Insurance Department for about 4 years in Jefferson City, Missouri. So I learned a little bit about regulation. That was a really good experience because I got very broad knowledge of different things in the property and casualty insurance space. And then I ended up going to employers reinsurance in Kansas City, Missouri, worked there for several years. I bounced around a little bit. So then I went to a specialty company in Moline, Illinois called John Deere Insurance. It was a kind of a captive of John Deere that wrote equipment dealers, automobile dealers, things like that in the commercial insurance space. Ended up going back to employers reinsurance. Worked at Lockton for a little while in Kansas City. And then about 15 years ago, I was recruited here to RLI and started out as their chief actuary and basically worked my way up since. So kind of a long story, but it has given me a very broad exposure in the insurance industry, although it has required that I had to move around a little bit, mostly in the Midwest, though.
Yeah, well, from the grounds up.
From the grounds up, maybe.
Has there been anyone, a mentor, a role model, somebody that you look up to, or any mentors that you could attribute some of your success to?
Well, I mean, I think my best mentors have really been either my direct bosses over those years. I think have been my best mentors. I mean, I've been very fortunate to have good bosses, to good supervisors along the way. I would recommend that to everybody that's getting started is always find somebody whose star is also rising and who also wants to involve their team in decision making, delegate, get them engaged. I think those are the best ones. I've been very fortunate along the way. I mean, I've had some ones that were probably not so good either, current company excluded, obviously. But along the way, I mean, I've been very fortunate to have some really good people. I mean, they've been smart, they've been driven, they're fun to work with, and I think that's important. I mean, you got to like what you're doing. I really believe people only do their best job if they're passionate about what they do, and they're only going to be passionate if they're having a little bit of fun while they do it. Right? It doesn't ever feel like work, if you have a passion around it. So.
We can all take that advice.
Yeah, and I've been very fortunate that my bosses have been relatively humble people too. So that's always good because that means they share credit, right? And they're not, that they feel like their star's rising already. They're trying to drag people along with them. their best people, the people that make them look good. And I think that's the best advice I would ever have, is always make sure you kind of work for a good boss. You should be interviewing your next boss as much as they're interviewing you, because I do think it's important to work for the right people.
That is good advice. I was going to ask you what your best career advice is. So then what would be your second best career advice?
Well, I mean, my dad always said, find something you're passionate about what you do, and love to do it. And it'll never be a day of work, right? It'll always feel like fun. And the other thing that he used to say was, whatever you do, do your best, right? So you always got to do that, but you also have to be passionate about it, because I think it's hard to do your best if you don't really like what you're doing, right? When I worked at John Deere, he had a John Deere, he founded, I guess, the steel plow a long time ago. He wasn't alive when I worked there, but he founded that company, right? The equipment dealer. And he had a saying, and I think you can look it up, but it goes something like this. It says, "Don't ever put your name on something that doesn't have in it the best that's in you." And it kind of is a corollary to, whatever you do, do your best. But I really believe, you want to give everything you got. You want to give 100%, and then you'll get recognized. I think you will get recognized by doing that. People recognize people that are really delivering and really care and really try hard.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish, or that now that you wish you would have learned earlier in your career?
I think how important networking with other people are. I mean, I was fortunate that my bosses realized that. But a lot of times when you're starting out, you want to like, well, this is what I do. I just want to do really good at it, and I don't really need to know a lot of other stuff. But I think that brings so much more context to the problem solving that you try to bring to the table. It allows you to think and learn about how what other people are doing and impact what you're doing. It also helps you understand how you're connected to, how you're making a difference in the bigger organization, which motivates you. I think it motivates you because you're making a difference. I think the worst thing to do is, right, and this comes with having you need a good boss, is I would tell you, you have to ask questions to make sure that, if you don't understand how what you're doing is making a difference, you need to make sure you're asking that question. And you need to make sure you have a boss that's willing to sit down and explain that to you, because that will motivate you every day if you can connect what you're doing to how it helps someone else, or how it helps the company make money, or it helps the customers serve a need. I mean, I think that's the most important. Provide context, a lens from which to solve problems, and that's basically what we're in the business to do, right? Every job is about solving problems. Now, there are things, every job, which I didn't think of, as an actuary and math guy, you say, well, sales, I'm not a sales guy, but at the end of the day, you're always selling, right? No matter what job you are, if you're selling an idea, you're selling. So you got to learn to sell and influence people, right? How do you influence people to adopt your ideas? And you've got to learn how to do that. And influencing is another way that you're going to get to the top, right? Influencing people, they understand you better. You're building a trusting relationship with those people. I think it's a way to be seen. It's a way to be acknowledged for having a broad perspective. And that's what I would tell you. Is do more networking. And I know the younger generation is better at it than the older generation, because the older generation was very in person, right? That's the only way you built relationships.
Nowadays, you got to do
you
both.
Got to learn a whole different way, and I'm trying to learn that right too. But I figure out how you got to manage it too, because it could get out of control, right? I don't accept new Facebook friends, for example, but I do accept new LinkedIn friends. I
think we're LinkedIn friends now.
You know as well as I do. Be careful what you put out there, because as an employer, most of them have a way to have access to it before they hire you. So,
well, and actually, that's funny. So, is there a character trait that used to hurt you that now helps you, that you've maybe changed the angle on, or?
Well, I think it's aligned with what I was talking about. I always thought public speaking wasn't that important, and I was pretty bad at it. I'm not going to lie. I mean, and you think about your public public speaking experiences through school, and I remember high school communication. I remember my teacher saying, "Speech is not his forte." Okay, that was actually on my C grade, the only C grade I ever got in high school. And it, you know, but then I think back about it, and I was really nervous speaker. I didn't like speaking, but you know, you get more comfortable over time after you do it. But you also, what you realize is that one, you got, I think I became too rote, too memorized, too, you know, prepared sometimes. But you know, when you're growing up in high school and college, you're asked to do public speaking communication classes a lot of times on topics that you don't know anything about. You have to go research, right? And I'm bad about being over prepared. That's probably another thing, over prepared in public speaking. What I've learned though is now, right, when they ask me to speak, like you're asking me today to speak, hopefully it's on something I know something about, right? That I've had experiences on. So I don't feel as nervous. I don't feel like I have to prepare as much. You come across as more genuine. You know, you come across as probably more humble and authentic when you're not overly prepared for those things. And I'm a lot more comfortable speaking because I know when I'm asked to speak, it's never on it. Nobody asks Craig Kliethermes to speak on, I don't know, being a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. They're not going to ask me about the law. They know I'm not an expert. So they might ask me, how does handling claims, how are you involved in the day-to-day of handling claims, or how do you get exposed to the claim department, which is an area I think you got your, uh, but, uh, you know, they won't ask me specifically about how you would handle a specific claim or how you would take something to court or how you would plead something out, because that's not what I'm an expert at. So they're always going to ask you about topics that you have some knowledge about now at this point. And I feel a lot more comfortable speaking than I did before, and less prepared, but much more authentic and humble. And I don't know about humble, genuine. How about genuine? All right.
Hey, definitely genuine. And now that I've gotten you relaxed and comfortable talking, I'm going to ask you some personal questions. And I'll ask a couple, you can answer whichever one you want. So what does your routine look like, / has it changed with COVID and everything? And like, what are you doing for fun now? Do you have a favorite book?
Well, so in my current role as president CEO, I mean, I spend a lot, I mean, people is probably the most important thing at my company, right? Is to make sure we have great people. We have a model that tries to empower people and lets them make decisions. They feel a little more autonomous. Mainly that comes because at RLI, we have an ESOP program, so every employee is an owner of the company. So we build this trust and accountability, and that every employee has a fairly significant, if they've been here more than 5 years, they have a fairly significant amount of their wealth tied up into the success of the company, which also empowers them to speak up. But I spend a lot of time making sure we find the right people, that they're, you know, that we're attracting people, that we're branding ourselves to people so they know. And that's one of the reasons I want to do this today, is because let people know about RLI. It's a great place to work. And you know, operations, I feel like I have to do a lot more managing up than I ever had to do before. I have a board of directors. I do fortunately have a CEO that's still here, but he's retiring at the end of the year. So I'm going to assume his position, which means instead of having one boss, I'm going to end up with 10 bosses. And you never really think about that, but 10 bosses are a lot harder to please than one boss, even if the one boss is hard to please, because 10 people never have the same opinion. So they all think you should be doing something different. So you're not going to make everybody happy. But so I spent a lot of time figuring out how do we share this information with the board of directors? How do I manage my CEO so that he has the information he needs to make sure he looks smart to the board of directors, right? He's and the chairman of the board. On the operational issues, on strategy, I spend a fair amount of time on that. And then when you get into the mundane, I mean, I get probably 100 emails a day. You know, 50 of them are junk emails. They're solicitors who just, you know, pop up and like, hey, and they act like they know who you are. And I'll tell you something, they want to set up a phone call, right? Those usually get deleted. And I do travel. I used to travel a lot pre-COVID. Don't travel as much as I have been, but I used to go out and meet with producers, you know, our distribution team, at our offices, with our analysts, because we're a publicly traded company. I have to meet with our analysts and talk about our stock and talk about our company and the things that we're working on, things that we're successful at, the things that we're working to improve. I visit tomorrow. I have to visit with S&P, the rating agency, because they rate us as a company. So we got to make sure we secure a high rating for our company. So I do a lot of that. And right now, oddly enough, I kind of converted in COVID what I did, and this kind of goes to that people discussion at the beginning. We sat there, I'm sure everybody for that first quarter or whatever, it's like, holy cow, is this really happening? Right? I mean, is this really? We're shutting the whole place down. And we were fortunate that our IT department, technology department was able to get people, we had I'll say 20% of our people working from home prior to that. And we were able to get their equipment out to them fairly quickly and really didn't miss a beat. A lot of that's because we have very deep relationships with our customers and our producers. So that's helped. But then after about 6 months, I was like, well, I'm missing this interaction. I used to go out to Christmas parties at the offices, because we have about 15 hubs across the country in most of the major cities.
You get to go party at all of them?
We used to go to, yeah, well, I didn't go to every one of them. We used to split up as a management team. And like, I would go, like last year, well, not last year, year before last, I went to 7 parties in the month of December at different offices that were either lunch, some of them were lunch at one place and dinner at another place. And I do that for like 3 straight weeks. We would just jump around and go meet people. But I also, when I go out to see producers, if we have an office, like I've went out to see analysts, I'll give you an example, on the West Coast. Well, when we were in the West Coast, I made a point, this was 2 years ago, to go to the LA office, go to our San Francisco office, and go to the Seattle office while I'm out there. So, and you get to visit with people there. So instead, I haven't been able to do that, right? We haven't really been able to do that. Most of those big offices, nobody's coming into those big offices in the big cities. So about halfway through, I just said, give me a list of all of our high potential employees, and I want to schedule one-on-one just discussions with people. How are they doing? And frankly,
that's awesome.
Actually, I think I don't like Zoom when it's like 12 people, 12 on one or whatever. Half the people check out and they put their face on, they put their video off. And it's hard to engage 12 people at one time in a video session. I think it's easier if you're in person, because you can kind of judge, is this person kind of checked out, or is that side still interested? It's all harder to do in Zoom. So I've scheduled these one-on-one meetings, and actually it's worked out well, because I spend 30 minutes with them talking. Some of it's personal, just how are they doing, how's their family doing, how they get through, and then I talk about work for about half the time, and how are they doing, what they got, any ideas about when people come back, or not everybody's going to come back, right? Some people want it permanently. So have they thought about that? How are they going to onboard people? How are they going to, the things we talked about earlier, how are you going to train new people? How are you going to share those experiences that I know you can do it on the phone, I know you can pick up, but it's just not as natural as, oh, I'm going to get coffee, I'm passing by their office, I'm going to ask them this question. I bet they've run in a similar situation to this before. I'm going to run this by them. It's a safe environment, one-on-one input. And how do you replicate those things when you're part remote, part at the office? So we've got to figure that out. I'm asking the people, the best and the brightest people that we have in the organization, what are their ideas? Because some of them are really enjoying, at least they want to make flex at least a couple days a week. They'd like to work from home. They still understand the value of collaboration in the office. So I'm just asking the hard questions, like, well, how do you build relationships with new people? How do you make sure that you create an environment that you're sharing ideas and other people are learning, from you, or you're learning from them? And then how would we onboard new people? That's probably one of the biggest concerns I have. You come up with solutions like for that, and I'm all in. Because people like being flexible. It makes us more attractive to the next generation of people too. So I think we're going to look at a hybrid approach in a lot of our big offices, where people come in 2 or 3 days a week. We want to make that a shared environment. So most of them are coming in on the same days. Those are going to be called like collaborative days, I think.
So instead of hoteling, now we actually want to all be there at the same time.
I don't actually see we're going to save space. I mean, we might in some places. That we have some jobs that are permanently going to be from home, right? They don't need that interaction, whatever. But I actually think we may have to change the layout. We may have less true offices and more shared collaboration space. But I'm envisioning we're probably going to have collaboration days where we want at least groups of people to come in, and they need it. Those are days we're going to have to figure out planning, right? Those are the days you're going to have to spend like, oh, this is where we have these sessions where we run ideas by roundtable sessions, whatever. And then 2 days a week, maybe it's Monday and Friday, I don't know, making up a day that makes it easier for people, where they don't have to do that 45-minute commute each way.
Yep.
And they save the time, and they still get to work from home. And those are the days, hopefully they can focus on the things like, I got to write this not paper, that's probably wrong, but I got to write this brief if I'm a claim person, or I've got to read a brief, or I got to have phone calls with outside people, right?
Yep.
They could do those on those. It's just going to take a little more planning, but we'll figure it out. And we're doing it from the bottom up with the people that are closest to it. Because to me, I'll probably still be in the office every day. I mean, our executive people will probably still be most days, unless once traveling starts, then I'll be here 60% of the time. So, oh, you did also, so that was a long question or a long answer to your question, but for fun, I mean, I golf a fair amount, as much as I can. I got a lot of golf in last year because of COVID. I mean, I got these great
That's a plus.
You know, the beauty of iPods is people don't know that you're on a golf course. You know, you can take phone calls when you're on a golf course. You know, before you used to have a string there, I knew iPods. You don't have to worry about that getting in the way.
You're multitasking, working and golfing.
Golf course. And
you
then
have to have fun when you're working, right?
And then I do read a lot. I mean, I'm interested in history. I'm interested in how to, you know, people's skills, success factors of people that are drivers to get things done. So I read all kinds of books that could be, some are for fun, some are for I'll say self-help, but some to help me understand strategy better, help me understand different people's perspective, and how to understand just people and the things that are changing around us. So, and I like history a lot. So, that's kind of what I do for fun.
Well, and I'll end on this one last one. Is there any skill or habit or anything that you've been working on over the last year besides golf skills?
Well, you won't know from this call, but yeah, try to talk less and listen more. You know, I mean, as your role changes, I think you have to realize that as you have people working for you, if you're the first one to speak, a lot of people that work for you aren't going to offer their opinion unless it's going to be the lady or the guy that says, "Yeah, that's a great idea, boss." You need to let them share their ideas first, and then you can kind of, you know, if you don't like their ideas, you can kind of, without embarrassing anybody, you can kind of move them to or influence in a way that says, well, what about that? Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about, you know, a different way or different perspective? And that's been harder. And I think I have to learn, you know, the higher you get in the organization, the more you have to be cognizant that everybody's watching you. They're watching everything you do. They're watching everything you say. You can tell in this call, I'm sometimes a little off the cuff, and I have to be more careful. I just have to, because as a publicly traded company too, it can be picked up and shared externally when it shouldn't have been shared externally, and that could be a problem as a publicly traded company. So I have to do that. I've worked really hard on being less excitable about bad news, because I get bad news every day in this job. You know, as an actuary, I always want to prevent bad news. That's in my blood. And it's been good reading around claim people, because you know what claim people do? The difference in claim people and actuaries always try to prevent bad things from happening. Claims people are always cleaning up other people's messes. So they already know the bad things already happened. They're just trying to get the best outcome they can with the piece of crap that they've been handed. Okay. and that's so by being more involved with people, it's like, you know, I hear bad, you know, you become a little bit immune to bad news. It's kind of like, we'll open up the Wall Street Journal today. I'm sure that there was like 3 companies that got hacked through cybersecurity, you know, their cybersecurity. The problem is, it's almost people have become, you know, they're not even excited about it anymore, because it's almost like, what's next? I mean, they're expected to get hacked, right? They're desensitized to right. I mean, I don't want to say that because I don't want to invite a hacker, because it could be really bad for you, your company, reputation. But you know, I just try to get less excited about bad news and just more focused on, okay, what's the solution to this bad news? How do we prevent it from happening again? As opposed to like worrying about blame. You're more interested in, okay, how did it happen? How do I happen? What am I going to do about it? And how am I going to make sure it doesn't happen again? Right?
Think like a claims person.
Yes. And we're really good about that.
What bad news is going to happen?
We're really
what are we going to do to fix it?
Claim people having a lot of interaction with their underwriters, so that when they see bad things happen, they're willing to communicate, say, look, if you did it a little differently, or have you ever thought about looking at this? you might not write that type of account again, because this is what's going to happen. And we thrive. RLI is really big. We like to call it the big U, which is the big U of underwriting, which means you share a lot of information between the claims and the underwriting, and I'll say the risk managers, the people that are looking at the data to try to validate those assumptions. And the reason the reason it works here is because we're all owners, and we feel like I'm raising my hand because this might help me make more money, or it might prevent us from losing money. So I'm going to say it. Even if you don't listen to me, I'm going to say it. And it's really helped. I mean, the underwriters are much more receptive here because they know that their goal is to try to make more money for the company, because if we're all successful, we'll all share in that success. And I mean, that's important. People sometimes don't realize that. At the end of the day, if you don't make money, you're not going to continue to be able to serve your customer either. So you've got to be able to make money too, to be able to serve your customer, and to be consistent in a stable market for them. So.
Well, those are some great focuses for you for the last year, and I am very excited to hear about your new role coming up. Congratulations on that. And insurance is exciting. I mean, it sounds like RLI is a great place to work, and if any of our RISE members are watching, you can go check them out, rlicorp.com. We'll put a tag here at the end of the video. And just thank you, Craig, for opening up, being authentic today, and for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amy. I wish you the best of success. So appreciate the opportunity.